you said last week, you said to me, what's your biggest storyline going to be for the year? And we never got to it. So I thought we may go 1 for 1 this morning. Right. We got 3 each in terms of what we think may be some big storylines to follow this year. You can go first.
Go first? Okay. So I think the biggest storyline will be about the movement of one of these three. The potential for Marcus Bontempelli at round 10 to not have signed, or round 12 or round 14, that will become a massive story.
You were onto this quicker than anyone, and I'm sure you saw him speak during the week. He's in no hurry.
No hurry. He needs the club to show that they're going to take those premiership steps. LDU's the same. And I heard Clarko say it's far from a disaster. It would be a disaster.
I don't know. I agree with Clarko there. I don't think it would be a disaster.
What do you mean?
Well, he gave a.
Let's do that as a separate chat.
Okay.
Because that's going to be a couple of minutes.
We'll put that on the agenda.
Put that in the agenda because I want to have a good chat about that. And Chad Warner, who I know bought a house somewhere, so you saying he's already gone.
Gone. He's gone.
He bought a house in West Australia.
He bought a house in Perth.
Where he's from. Yeah, where he's actually from originally.
Yeah, well, he's going to live there, or he's going to rent out his $4 million house. I think he's going to live there.
So my number one story will be the potential for those three to vacate their current club.
All right.
Yours?
Well, I think the biggest stories in football are in relation to coaches. And whether that's right or wrong, unfair, fair, whatever it is, I think that's always the biggest story that you can get is a coach under pressure throughout the year. And I think this year, unfortunately, there's a number of storylines in relation to the coaches. So I'm putting them all in the same category here. It's the coaches. So from Bevo and the start that the Dogs may or may not have with the difficulty of their draw in the first 6 weeks and lack of availability of some of their stars, how will the club respond to that? How will Luke handle that? And how will the club rally around him if things get off to a rough start there? Matty Nix is one. I think the expectation for Adelaide is to win a final now. Like they can't be in year 6 of a situation now where they're not rebuilding and not have the success that club is craving after not playing finals for so long. Will it unravel at Port? And we haven't even touched on the Port Adelaide story for that. What if they get off to a bad start? Will the club hold firm? Will they see Ken out? Or will they make a call after round 6, 7 or 8? I think that'll be a story. Longmuir at Freo, and then I think Vossi's probably in the same category as well, despite the lack of availability he's had at times. I think the Blues fans are ready and have had enough with this group.
Yeah. So if you had to have, say, your top 3 in order of most likely to lose their job in 2025, in order, number 1?
Well, Ken, probably.
No, Ken. You've been supporting Ken for 5 years.
Well, now
every conversation I have about Ken, oh, no, he's a great coach. Now you got him number 1.
No, I stand by that. And I disagree with what the club did during the week, as you saw with my shirt off and my walk and talk. I don't agree with it. So that's one, but that's the easy one.
Don't laugh it off with the walk and talk. I'm not taking Ken as number 1. That's out.
Okay.
Give me your real number 1. Give me your real number 1.
That's the gavel. My real number 1 is Bevo, and then it would be Longmuir, and then it would be Nix. What's your second biggest storyline for the year?
My second biggest. That was very good from you. I think the big story. I want to give put a positive one in there.
Good.
Right? I think the Gold Coast making a serious charge.
Oh, hang on.
And
Kingy.
and let me put an and in there. And Fremantle potentially winning their first premiership.
This is
They're the 2 big stories.
This is
in a positive
unbelievable.
Sense. I've been on the Gold Coast for years.
You've been wined and dined.
No.
I've been
on them for years. I've been on them for years. You know I have. I said they win a flag within 24 months last year, and I still think they'll be a big story. Like I know you're gonna come at me because of the wine.
No, you've been wine. You've had. I've been getting. You've had. Did you have a margarita? Did you have a margarita on Gold Coast Dime?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't have a margarita.
Did anyone have a margarita?
Did anyone have a margarita?
Did any of the A graders?
I didn't see any margaritas, but I'm disappointed I didn't have one if they were up for grabs. I feel like I've missed out. Now I'll be better the next time I'm wine and dine, right? There's growth. There's growth in me, Cornsey. No, I think the Suns. I mean, the highest they've ever finished is 12th. It's amazing, really.
Yeah.
So this is it. And when you hear Noah Anderson, we'll have a chat about that later on. What he said about the change in this football club. It's a deeper issue to discuss in the agenda. And Fremantle. I mean, what more do you need? Seriously. And we ranked the lists a couple of weeks ago, and they are, in my opinion, it's the best list in footy right now.
Ooh.
So just get it done. So they're for me, in a positive sense, one of the stories of the year. You?
All right. My second biggest story is the Collingwood retirement home and how this is going to play out. It can either go one of two ways, and I got no idea which way it's going to go. We could be sitting here going, well done, all in, amazing to take the risk and do what you've done to give yourself another opportunity to win a flag. 2 in 3 years would be amazing. But if it goes poorly, this is Richmond Mark II all over, and you'll have to cut it and you'll have to rip it off and start again, because they're just, if you go through the draft since 2014, there's not many players that have been drafted since then in this lineup. They've sold everything for this year, so I think it's a good storyline to watch. And if it pays off, well done. And then you are Richmond and you win a couple of flags, and then you're more than happy to start again. But I think it's worth watching this year with the coach not wanting draft picks and not believing in the draft and being all in for the now. And it may work, it may not. We'll see how it goes. It's a big story.
Yeah, but it's a worthy. It's a worthwhile gamble, isn't it?
Well,
what's the other option? Get one more draft pick in. Well, what does pick 6 do for you in the next 3 years? What does pick 10 do for you in the next 3 years? You got to do this when you're at that stage.
Yeah, I think others have done it slightly differently.
Give me an example.
Well, I think Geelong have done it slightly differently. You bring in, you revitalise with under 23s, and they have the advantage.
They shipped out 3 first-round picks for Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah, but that paid off. But then they also brought in Henry and Bruin and Clark with a top 10 pick. They've now brought in Bailey Smith, who is at an age where he's going to play for 10 years. And they've got some, like Neil is not an old player, De Koning is not an old player. Geelong have a lot more under 23s or under 24s than Collingwood do, that have been brought in not through the draft, but essentially players that were drafted high up, and then they've got them to their footy club. So I think it's slightly different, and there's different ways that you can do it. Melbourne have probably done it differently as well, to not great success, but they've got a core group of under 24s coming through together now that you can see where the future is going. There's nothing. There's Nick Dacos, and that's it. So we'll see how it plays out.
All right.
Big story.
It's a big story. You're right. I'll tell you what's going to be a subtle story. Might be not as big in the paper. I think the years of Andrew Dillon, Laura Kane are under the spotlight. I really do.
You don't reckon that's a big story?
Well, it has the
subtle.
potential to be a big story, but right now it's just a subtle little bubbling away, simmering type discussion, because the clubs don't think that the AFL are listening to them, and they desperately need, in my opinion, they desperately need someone like a John Longmire, who's a seriously intelligent guy, in their ranks quickly. They need someone that can bridge the gap. There is a gap, and it's getting wider, I feel. And this is every message that I get from AFL clubs, not just one, not the wine and diners, every club. I don't need a small carbonara and a pizza to work out this one, Cornsey. I think that this is a story that there's a disconnect that is growing.
Like it and agree with it. Agree with that. And we're getting John on. I've been told, like, John is one of ours. Like, he is one person that would come on the show.
I'm even having to work hard on some mates to get them on. I don't know what you've done to the Swans. What did you do to the
Swans?
Yeah.
I couldn't be any more complimentary of the Swans. My man Will Hayward and...
Oh, that was funny the other day. I thought it was a bit cheeky of Channel 7 to use the Fox promos, but anyway, that's fine. That's all's fair game, I guess.
My last storyline is I'm slightly fascinated by Harley Reid and how this plays out. I think there is a case of second-year blue-itis starting to flare.
Really?
Yep. The second-year blues is just... he's in the danger zone for the second-year blues.
What makes you say that?
I don't think it's been a great preseason for him. And if you're not training at the level you need to be the player that we think he's going to be, then I think that'll come back to bite you. Now, it's second year, I get it. Some players take 4, 5, 6 years and they eventually get it. Some happens straight away. So it might take him a couple of years. I'm not saying he's not going to get there and be a top liner. But the second part to that is, if the contract hasn't been extended halfway through this year, how does the media over there and the rest of us handle this? We're already seeing reports of 20 million over 10 years. That's almost an impossible deal to knock back for Harley Reid.
20 million over 10?
Yeah. Don't you think? Like,
I think that would prove to be, in 7 or 8 years' time, a bargain.
Okay.
He's going to get massive coin. The Stars right now are going to cash in big time.
So I think
Dacos and Harley Reid, these guys.
And as you said last week, West Coast don't lose them. Well, the players that they've wanted to keep, they've
Not
kept
the ones
them.
they want. Yeah,
So
exactly.
is this an outlier? What's his season going to be like? Is he physically prepared and ready to go for round one? I've got my doubts on that. So I just think that the Harley Reid circus, if that's what you call it, is going to be a storyline to follow this year.
Where do you sit with the storyline of regarding Jamara?
Yeah,
I just think this will. I think this will have the potential to morph into a trade discussion.
Yeah, no, I saw him on the 7 News last night with Mitch Cleary doing what Mitch does best, not giving opinions, but giving news and going to the airport and getting an exclusive interview with Jamara. And
I like his podcast.
It was excellent, and Jamara was really honest.
Another one that.
But I didn't leave that, and it was a brief grab, of course. Didn't leave that feeling super confident of how things are going to go for him this year. So, I mean, that's all mixed in with the Bevo and the Western Bulldog stuff for me and how the club handle it. You spoke about the magnificent Eddie Corn's podcast a little bit earlier on. You had an exclusive with Koshy, but I want to make this serious because Port Adelaide is all about the premiership or bust, right? The only measure of success is a premiership. So Koshy was asked how he will reflect on the Ken Hinkley era.
So when you reflect back on Ken's tenure, obviously he's still got a year to go. Do you consider it a success?
I do. It's not the ultimate success. His win-loss ratio has been enormous. I think the lowest we ever finished was 10th. The least number of games was 10. We won last 5 years, our win-loss ratio has been in the top 2 or 3. But also what he's done for this club in terms of being a leader and developing players and developing a football program. He and Chris Davies are just sensational and appreciated right through the AFL industry for who they are as people and what they've done.
Have they talked themselves into knots with setting the expectation on a premiership is the only measure of success, but then when you ask the question, they sort of dance around the issue? I think it's been a success. I think I will reflect on the Ken Hinkley era with rose-coloured glasses as a raging success. You, on the other hand...
Raging success?
Well...
Raging
from
success.
Where it was. Like, you've got to understand this,
you're talking about 12, 13 years ago.
I know that. I know. But every year, with a substandard list, they rock up and they give themselves a position. I do. Well, you rate their list. Where would you rate Port Adelaide's list?
The 2024 list had eight All-Australians on it.
Eight individuals.
More than 8 individual All-Australians on the list.
Travis Boak is like 38 now. You can't count him.
But he's had him for his whole career, mate. He had him through the best part of his years. You can't say, now he's 32. He had him when he was bloody 22.
So Houston's not there for the prelim final. Farrell's not. You rate that they got to be on the park to count. Like, you can't blame Ken Hinkley for Isaac Rank and Dan Houston cleaning him up.
Yeah, but you're talking about one game. Mate, we're talking about 10 to 12 years of footy.
No, I think across
some pretty talented lists.
Time, he's had some talented individuals, but never a list that... Anyway, you and I have backed over this a long time. So has the club set the standard?
I've never heard you say one thing negative about the recruiting department until I mentioned Ken Hinkley, and then it's the list. That's what you say that every time.
That is a lie.
It's true.
Okay, so what do you want your final... You can have the final say on this because you said it's been this week has been a mess. which I tend to agree with, by the way.
This has been
If you-
this is the long goodbye doesn't work, right?
Yep,
It doesn't
agree.
work. I don't care what anyone says. It doesn't work. You make this decision that he's not the man. If you think he's going to win the flag this year, you're not replacing him.
Correct.
At the end of the year, right? So
You've been
they
watching
don't
my
think-
walk and talk.
Of course I watched it. I watched it 30 times. I couldn't believe it any of those 30 times. But I don't think this has been handled well for the last 3 years. To re-sign him in August, we called it out the day he said this. We had Koshy on. And I just think that this club they just changed their mind on the run. And you talked about Melbourne last week not being genuine. Well, they haven't been genuine over the last 2 weeks.
No, they haven't.
They were
been-
called out by
they
Matt
haven't-
Turner.
Yeah, they haven't been transparent. No,
They haven't, no.
no, and which is what I said to you at the time when this story broke and we couldn't get anyone from the club on. I said, "Well, tell us what is happening." Like this handshake sort
No,
of.
they
rubbish,
did tell us.
This
They came up
handshake
with
stuff that we've known about for 2 years, yet was never publicly revealed, hasn't been transparent, and
No,
I'm
they
happy
said-
to call that out.
No, they went further than that. They said this was a speculative
Speculative piece. Yes.
No, was it? It was bloody
It was
100% accurate.
Yep. Apologies
It's not
to
a speculative piece at all.
Matt. Apologies to Matt.
But I don't see you call them out like you call the demons out.
I'll get the audio for you. You watch my walk and talk. I mean, 180,000 people have watched it. Watch it again. I 100% called it out. I couldn't have called it out anymore.
I don't reckon 180,000 watched it.
I
I reckon
instantly-
30,000 watched it 6 times because they couldn't believe
I
it.
instantly called it out. All right, what's on your agenda?
I want to. Can we just have a listen to what Noah? The boys had some great chats during the week. They
Yeah,
had
they
Dean
what?
Cox on at the start of the week, which was a great start for the boys back. And Sammy's just telling me we'll do it after the break, so that's a little bit disappointing.
Okay.
We've got to have a quick break because you went too long on Port Adelaide.
Okay, my bad. So we do have a hard break in about a minute's time.
I'm going to go quickly then.
Okay.
Luke Davies-Uniacke, Alistair Clarkson said it's not a disaster if he walks. Well, that staggers me, that language.
Really?
Third year of Alistair Clarkson, you want players coming in when
Mm-hmm.
you've got a coach like this of the ilk of LDU, not players leaving. You got to provide the environment where they want to stay.
But
the money's there.
You don't sell the farm to keep one player. I thought he answered that Alistair Clarkson very well, and he reflected on the Buddy Franklin stuff. They've got an offer in front of him which is big. If he doesn't want to take that offer, then okay, well, it's disappointing. We'd love to keep him, but we move on, and you don't sell the farm for one player.
I don't know if you can keep moving on. I don't know if you can just keep moving on when players
They haven't
of this
lost many
calibre.
though. They haven't lost many. North.
Who?
North haven't lost many.
What do you mean?
Well, they lost Horn Francis, but everyone else, Larkey stayed, Zerha stayed, Simpkins stayed, Sheegsel stayed. They haven't lost that many.
This would be an
It
enormous
would be
loss.
a big blow, but it wouldn't be one that you sell everything to
I
keep him.
disagree.
I thought he answered that pretty well, Clarko. All right, what else is on your agenda?
Well, I just want to have a chat about the boys, as I said before we were interrupted. They had a great week of guests.
Good week of guests, didn't they?
Very envious of what they were able to secure as opposed to our listings. Albeit Eddie Corns is now stealing them as well. Noah Anderson was on with Gary and Tim, and he said some interesting things.
We had a clear game plan under Dewey, but Dimmer's level of detail is probably a lot higher and very specific with what players he wants to play what roles and what the roles look like on the ground. And when we went away and when we faced challenges in game, we probably didn't have the toolkit that we needed out there to fix it ourselves because it was such a fresh game plan and system that we were used to Dimmer helping us out in training and we didn't really have the tools. So I think that's where our biggest growth will be, is making us understand that it's our team and we've got to understand how to fix these problems as they come. So the group is maturing. I think we're definitely taking the right steps forward. So I'm really excited for this year and really confident.
Not a great rap for Stewie Dew, is it? That's a bit of a parting shot.
It is. And there would be two sides to that story. Stewie Dew may think that the group that he had wasn't ready for that level of detail. Like, he's a pretty smart guy. There's no one really much smarter when it comes to footy than Dewey, and I know Brisbane are rapt to have him. So maybe it was just the age demographic, the list that he had. I'm sure there'd be a different version.
So where do you sit philosophically with that discussion? Do you coach the way you want the team to play, or do you coach what you've got at hand?
Yeah, I mean, I think you coach what you've got at hand. I'm sure that Adam Uze isn't implementing a very strategic game plan with lots of intricacies for the group that he's got at Richmond now, when you're going to be playing a lot of players that are under 20 games. So I think you've got to tailor your game plan to what you've got. And then your expectations grow when the group gets more experience, when they're in those positions. You learn from it, you review the training footage, you review the game footage, and you start to add layers to the game plan. But you can't implement a seriously complicated game plan for a group that's not ready for it.
And I think what Damien Hardwick's done is highlighted to the footy world the importance of halfback flankers in the modern game. The Rioli acquisition will be a beauty. And Dan Houston, fresh set of eyes, different function at Collingwood. He's been terrific in that role at Port Adelaide, but I just think it's becoming such an aggressive role now. The gun coaches work it out pretty quick.
Was Ken Inkley referring to you when he said this?
This is a concession that you come with the flag in 2025.
Opinions are interesting, aren't they? They are just that. They're opinions, and you're allowed to have them. But uneducated and unqualified at times, without all the information. What I like about some of those, and I'm not Kane because I get on very well with Kane, but I think there's no accountability to opinions. I'd love to have some accountability to opinions like I do and like Josh does and David does every week. Have some accountability to what you say.
Do you think there's accountability to opinions?
Do you think that we get held accountable for what we say?
Well, I do, but what does it matter? What does it matter? Well, essentially, we've got a boss, right? And we're accountable to
the
that.
Public. And the people that listen to our show, text in, or you run into them. We're accountable.
How's your social media when you have an opinion that doesn't?
I've got no problem with being
true.
held accountable. Why would Ken worry about what people outside of his four walls say? What really? Who cares? Why do they worry about this stuff?
Well, coaches do.
But why?
You would say, I don't know, but he's not the only coach. So your phone would blow up from time to time when you've said things. You think, why is he worried about that? But they do. That's human nature, particularly if someone's been critical of them. So
how would Ken hold us accountable? So let's just go into that.
Well, that's the part I don't know what his utopia is for us being held to account.
Why do you say that's about me though?
No,
what would he be holding me? But what would he be holding me accountable for with the Port discussion?
No,
we've discussed.
I was just having a bit of fun with that. He's more talking about the broader media landscape and opinions. I don't know how he wants. Like, if you get an opinion wrong, are you sacked? I'm not sure how his utopia is.
Feel over.
Yeah, I would have thought. Anyway, I thought it was a strong comment, and because you and I have strong opinions, I thought it was worthwhile.
Where's he end up, Ken?
He'll get a good job. He'll get a good job as a coaching director at another club, and maybe this 12 months gives him time to find a pretty good job.
Do you think he's in for the Tassie role?
I think he'd be in the mix. Yeah, I do. Yep.
Where would you have him in the running?
Well, I had Fagan one, but he ruled himself out during the week. So I think Ken would be in with Buckley and perhaps Chris Scott and Longmire if he wanted to do it. But yeah, top 3 or 4 candidates.
Well, I'm putting in the gun any club that has significant interest or is looking to recruit Taron Thomas at the end of season. Now, the AFL and Johnny Ralph's written a terrific article this week saying that he's now eligible to play at the next level down. They've ticked off on that, so he can't play with an affiliated AFL club or like type, but he can play next level down on his rehabilitation back to wherever that takes him. You just cannot recruit this guy. I mean, we've seen hours and hours put into Darren, and it's failed every time. The rehabilitation has been an ongoing event when he went through his time at North Melbourne. I just think that you're asking for trouble. Now, a lot of people say that's too harsh. You've got to provide opportunities for these guys to make their way back, and it's an opportunity to learn and get his life back on track. But I just think when clubs speak to their members, it would be a very difficult sell to your fan base having recruited Darren Thomas.
There's no doubt about that. Everything you've said there is accurate. And I've been as hard as anyone on Taron Thomas, and I was hard on North Melbourne because I thought they gave him too many opportunities. And you and I discussed that at length at the time.
Yep.
To play devil's advocate here for just a brief moment, should he never, ever play football again?
Well, if he does play AFL football again or is listed by one of the clubs, well, what's the message you're sending? What's the message that club is sending, or the AFL in a wider role? You know, we have all these themed rounds. We have causes that we champion. We want to be role models to every young person, you know, making their way in life. You know, follow this path, do this, don't do that. You know, and then we would be taking a back step if you ask me. I just don't think this is a viable option for any AFL club going forward. And this is not sour grapes from a kangaroo's point of view. This kid was a star. I love watching him play. But you know, we've had a lot of players come and go that are just not made for AFL footy for whatever reason, right? That are of significant talent. This is just what you have to live with after making these decisions.
What do you think? And look, you're going to get a lot of support. We touched on this on Sports Day last night, and that's the overriding sentiment. This issue is too serious to allow Taron Thomas back, and I think the hurdles that clubs are going to have to jump will be too significant to get him to the point. But should he never ever play again? So,
do you think he should?
No, I think the AFL have looked at this. They've clearly got more information than I do on the work that he's done, and this is a very, very small step to try and reintegrate him into society. Now, we've completely separate issues, I get it, but you know, imagine if someone had said to Tyson Stengel after the multiple issues that he has had, you'll never play again. And I'm not comparing issues, right? No. Completely different issues. But he did something similar. He went and got his life sorted, got a job, went to Woodville West Torrens, showed how much it meant to him, played in a premiership, and then came back and won one, an All-Australian, and the contract he's recent. What a story it is for Tyson. And I get, please don't hound me down. Completely separate issues. I get it. I don't know. I don't know if it's a forever. You're done. You're banished. We don't want anything to do with you again. Because where does that lead him? So can he get his life back on track? Can he put the work in? How much does it mean to him before a club would even consider picking up the phone and speaking to his management?
Risk?
No, and I don't think there will be a club that will. To be completely fair,
think so?
I don't think so. The AFLW programs now, how serious this is, what a blight it's been on society. So I don't think a club will be prepared to take the risk on him. But to see him actually allowed to play football again at a lower level, I don't know. I probably think that's not a bad step for him to be able to take.
And none of us are perfect. And some of the texts are right. I've made mistakes in life, and you do get repeat opportunities in different forums. But I just think these are the causes that we've been front of queue to try and stamp out in society. And if you waver a fraction here, I think you lose a lot of ground, and you'll disappoint a lot of people. The fallout for St Kilda last year, when they even met with Taron, was significant, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Brad Scott, from memory, had some positive things to say about him and his hope for him to get back, and that was smashed as well. So, as I said, and as you've said, I think it's going to be too much of a risk, and one that no club will be willing to take. You're going to hit your little gavel.
Mine doesn't look as good as yours. I'm going to get some work done on mine during the week. Hey, look, I know you've In the Gun's one of my favourite segments because we tend to listen to every other bit of media chat through the week, whether it's you or I. We're across it, right? You had a little couple of drive-bys during the week from the Tradies podcast.
Did I?
Are you aware of that? Have a little listen.
What did you think of people sort of enjoying their follow-up to you?
What do you mean?
Well, didn't Kane say this a year or two back?
And stop having opinions off other people's opinions. If I employed these people, I'd want my money back.
So what are you doing to me here? What? Why are you taking me down this dark path?
Is Hutchie paying Kane for 4 days last week? Off the back of that?
Wow.
This is
pretty strong.
This is a bit venomous, wasn't it?
It was Yeah, it was. I enjoyed
It was a bit venomous.
It was strong.
Mitch going into areas he wouldn't usually go into. I wouldn't have thought. As I said at the time, I gave Sam a compliment for the content. I said this was great content.
You did.
I was jealous that I didn't think of doing it first.
I think called you out for your sluggish start to 25.
But I just thought it was it had to be called out because it was the worst football list that I've seen. But just a message to Mitch and Scoop. You're not opinionists, right? You are news-breaking journalists. You bring us the news. And what happens with these guys is they get lazy and they stop breaking news and they want to have opinions. So they're in the gun this morning. It's just a watch. It's just a watch on those two. Don't stray far away from what your strengths are. And your strengths are to break news, to the best that do it, to young up-and-comers hungry. Don't get lazy and don't stray into the opinion space. You are not opinionists.
They're allowed to have an opinion.
Leave that. No, they're news-breaking journalists and they've been straying way too much into the opinion game. And it's lazy, and I'm calling it out. So Mitch and Scoopty-Doo, They're in the gun.
Now, I listened to the whole thing.
Oh, did you?
I actually chucked it on in the car, and I got through the lawnology that you were doing, and then I put on the, I thought, I've got to listen to something different than this. You don't even know what you're doing on your own show. And I'll tell you what, I'll go a step further. They would have mentioned you 15 times on their podcast, right? So if they're going to have this stance on Kay Corns, don't use him for any of your content.
Okay.
No fodder. So I'm going to keep count of how many times they
You
use
keep count of
your-
that. I'll keep count of the opinion space when it should be the news-breaking space. Grays.com, Australia's leading online auction marketplace. It's easy to buy and sell with Grays.